Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Midwest Whitetail After Hours, presented to you by Hoyt Archery. My name is Jason Science. I'll be your host this evening. I have a couple other guys with me here on the line. I've got Max, I've got Jared, I've got Mike, and last and certainly not least, Owen.
I appreciate
Guys,
it.
how's it going?
Going well.
Going
It's
well.
Oh, great.
it's been. I feel like I need counseling after this week. How about you guys?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Tell me more.
Don't.
It's
It's been a grind. I hate to say it already, but it's been a grind. First of all, this is my tip for tonight. No charge. Don't look at social media if you want to bolster your confidence in what your plan is.
Yeah, exactly.
good advice. So you struggled, huh, Jason?
So
Well, you were duck hunting tonight, so not counting tonight.
well,
Tell me you're
listen,
always throwing out telling
Jared, there's times that I've tried to be responsible, and I didn't feel that it was responsible to try and shoot a deer tonight and move or leave at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. So
Yeah, I hear you.
that's responsible is my middle name. No, it was just it was a tough week. I got on, if you guys remember, I got on the deer we called Gumby. Um, I think you guys have all seen a picture of him, and had him at 42 yards on Saturday night. He came out of the bedding area that I knew or that I felt like he was in. I got a bunch of cutty back
Water
camera.
in it, please.
Um, let's get this drink order. Uh, he came out of the bedding
Sorry.
area that I
I
thought.
muted myself.
on the rock, please.
Full service bar there.
Right.
Yeah.
Just snap your fingers.
Sorry, Jason, go ahead.
Um,
Ah,
anyway, I really feel like I know where he is, and I know where his core is, and I know that that's only going to last a short period of time. So it's a great time to go to Missouri whitetail hunting. But so I set up on a pinch. That's a great pinch. The wind, oddly enough, was perfect for the last 3 days out of the east. I checked the trail cameras before I went in there. He had been there every day, with the exception of one, the 4 days prior to that. So I felt like I was in the chips, right? I sat there morning number one, which would have been Wednesday. I probably should have shot a deer that I let go, but I really have my heart set on this deer. I had a nice mature 10-point come by. Never gonna be a big scoring deer, but walked right underneath me. Gumby never showed. I went home, hunted him that night. Same sort of pattern, but just switched it up. Other end of the farm, went from north to south. Never saw him. Next morning, which was yesterday, I climbed in the tree and I was sitting there in the dark enjoying myself, just the quiet and peace. And I heard something, and I'm like, "Oh, what is that?" And I looked down below me, and I'm like, "It looks like a deer," and it was him. And he walked right underneath me, and there was just absolutely nothing I could do about it. So he was there. He just came through early, and I wanted to throw my whole setup at him, but I didn't. And last night was a bust because it was raining. So I actually did some real estate stuff, and then this morning, great wind again. It was pretty. The air was pretty heavy, so I didn't know what my chances would be. So I sit there till 10 o'clock. My partners and I wanted some stands moved. They're on their way to Missouri a day early. So I thought I better get down at 10 o'clock, and I did that, only to get home at, you guys know what's coming, right? Only to get home at 12 o'clock, and the guy that owns the land called me, and he's just flabbergasted. He's like, "You are not going to believe the buck that's out by the pond breeding a doe." And I'm like, "No, you're probably right." Because I'm only sitting, this pinch is only like 100 yards from there. And it's not that far from bedding, and he's describing the deer to me, and I'm just like, "Oh my gosh!" And it's just one of those situations. Like, who knows if it was going to be close, but But anyway, it sounded like a pretty wild time. He's got a pretty good sized pond there between his house and where I sat, and a 3 year old, and then John, the owner, knows deer. He's just for health reasons he doesn't hunt anymore, and he knows big deer, and he knows what a big deer looks like. But he was just all sorts of wound up, and he said they were chasing her through the water, just making a whole bunch of ruckus, and so I missed out on that. And like I said, I went duck hunting tonight. So I feel like when I get back on the 4th, I feel like I'm still going to be okay. He's definitely going to be all willy-nilly all over the place by then, but I think if he does what he did last year, I think he's going to stick in that core area.
Yeah.
That's what I'm telling myself because I'll feel better.
Now, Jason, you didn't see this firsthand, but do you feel like that doe was in estrus or just wishful thinking on the buck's part?
Well, I don't, so he started to tell me that, there was breeding, and then as I listened to his story, it sounded like Gumby ended up coming off the ridge because there was all this commotion and grunting and growling and whatever you call it. And he came off the ridge and sort of busted it up, and he eventually just walked away. He said nothing happened. So I have a feeling it's just, an overzealous 3-year-old deer. I know that there's does that are going to come into estrus now. They're few and far between, but they're definitely gonna. So I don't know what to say, but I have not seen, people are like, oh my gosh, the rut's early because they read someone's post on Facebook. And listen, I don't think anything's changed. I don't know about you guys, but
Well, every time you get some 40-degree weather, the rut's early.
right, exactly,
That's right.
right. It's happening early this year, guys.
Yeah.
No, it's not. Mike, your microphone is muted, so we can't hear you. We can see you though. There we go. Now we got you.
Yeah, I think Jared's probably helping me. Will somebody help me keep my kids out of it? Can you guys hear my kids? I don't know. Sorry.
No.
Couldn't hear anything.
They're wrestling out there. They're wrestling.
But Owen, you bring up a really good point, and it's something that I think that just as a check yourself before you wreck yourself kind of thing. Nothing is going to happen this year that hasn't happened every other year. You're going to have those highs and you're going to have those lows. And if you're on the X, you're on the X, and it's going to happen that night. And if you're not, it's not. And that's just the rut. It's got nothing to do with being early, late, or otherwise. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I think when you get that, this kind of weather, the activity is spurred, and then of course all the bucks have wishful thinking, the rut's getting close and they're all, nudging does around and all that kind of thing. So
Right.
the same thing we see every year when you get this kind of weather, But is there really any breeding going on? Probably not.
No.
They've done enough fetal dating studies to know when peak breeding is. I mean, I read a couple papers last year. There was a few does that get bred early, that come into estrus early. It's not very many. And if you see one, it's pretty. It's going to be a pretty wild time. Being one of the first ones that comes into estrus. But the bulk of them come in mid-November, and it's that way every year. And the other conditions might show us some of that daylight activity.
Regardless, though, we're close enough now that now we're getting this cold weather, and it's even that more powerful, especially with getting the mature bucks on their feet, because we are so close to that breeding time now. So I think that's what a lot of people are seeing right now. Is it's not that the rut started early, it's just we're close enough that the cold weather that we're getting is that much more impactful on mature bucks moving around.
The one thing that I will say real quick, and I'm curious to hear if you guys have gotten that, is the day prior to Gumby walking underneath me, I left the stand at like 10 something, and I'm seeing this often. Very mature deer, 5, 6, 7-year-old deer on their feet at like 12:23, 11:18. Are you guys seeing that on your cutty links?
Very much so, Jason, especially after you get some kind of a weather like we've had where we had 2 or 3 days of rain in a row and that movement was somewhat subdued. And then once that rain moves out and then they're just all over the place. I mean, like today, looking at the cutty links, there was all kinds of activity between 12 and 2 today, which
Exactly.
you don't see a lot of, you know?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Same.
So you think that's just a direct result of again, it's just boils down to weather. Would you guys say that that's the case?
Yeah, I think in this case it was the rain effect. You know, they were kind of subdued for that 3 days. There was a
Yeah.
little bit of movement when the rain would quit, but you know, they were pretty much, you know, they didn't move much anyway, as far as the camera showed. And then once that broke, then they were on their feet all day, it seemed.
Yeah.
I saw that same thing. Soon as the little patches, I had some does and young bucks in the breaks in the rain. You could just tell you get a series of half a dozen pictures. But today specifically for me at 12:30 all the way through 3, 4, 5 o'clock, some definitely of mature age 3, 4, 5 year olds that were walking around checking a lot of scrapes. I think after this rain, freshening them up and keeping their tabs on their little area.
Where were
To
you at?
Jared's point, I mean, we're just getting closer, right? So some of them are starting to cruise a little more and move a little more, and you know, it's a combination of those things.
Yeah, I went out tonight and I saw my first good chase of the year, like probably 140-inch 10, ran a doe clear across a bean field. I was actually trying to kill a couple of does and ran her all the way down to me. I was trying to get full draw. He's hot on her tail, and she came in real quick. The wind swirled. She stopped in her tracks and spun around. The buck chased her back up over the hill, kind of where they came from, and not, 60 seconds later, a big brood of an 8, just a big heavy 8, clearly mature deer came out. I mean, this is probably 5 o'clock tonight, pretty early. Came out just to see what all the commotion was about and got on their scent trail and followed them, kind of just slowly walked. The mature buck wasn't like, trying to get in on the game, but he followed them up there just to check things out. So it was cool to see that activity. That was the first good hard chase of it, at least, not a yearling buck or 2-year-old buck messing around tonight.
Yeah, I haven't seen a real good chase yet. I've seen the year and a half, maybe some 2-year-old stuff, but nothing from a mature deer.
Yeah. Almost had a first kill a doe that was being dogged by a buck. Couldn't get an arrow shot though.
Did anybody else go out tonight?
Should have.
Max, what'd you do tonight?
Yeah, I knew this was. I was on date night. Had to get my one out of the way.
Max,
I know, dude.
what
I
is
tell
going
you-
on?
Yeah. You guys are all married. The hard chase is over.
Oh,
You guys are the 10-year-old that is the same doe you got her pin.
settle down.
The rot's in full swing in Max's house.
I said, Max, you better be putting the ring on tonight if you're having date night in late October.
Yeah, right. Yeah, don't set the precedent, man. Oh God.
You need to set some expectations here.
The forecast of the wind kind of spooked me, and then ever since I committed, killed me all day because that wind just didn't seem. I was seeing like 20, 25, and I sure didn't feel that every time I stepped outside. It was
It
brutal.
really wasn't that. It wasn't
felt-
close to what the forecast was.
It was one of those damp feeling days where it just feels, the real feel was 10 degrees colder than the temperature, and I was kicking myself the entire day.
Especially with your cutty links going off all day.
Mm-hmm.
Jason and Owen, I got a question for you guys, since you guys are a little bit different location than us other three. One thing Mike and I were talking about, and I was talking about with the guys last night, is the amount of foliage left on the trees right now is crazy. Like it doesn't seem like it's almost November, and everything's still really green if you get back in the timber. So that some of these first week in November spots that we like to get back in the timber, back closer to bedding, it's going to be a lot more challenging unless a bunch of things change, a bunch of leaves fall over the next 4 or 5 days. But it seems way behind here.
Mhm.
Is it like that up there too?
Yeah.
Jason? And
Go
no,
ahead, Jason. Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%. We were, as a matter of fact, oddly enough, we were talking about it tonight, sitting in the duck blind as we watch this. Look, we can see this ridge, and a lot of the oaks are, especially the red oaks, are green yet, barely just
Mhm.
starting to change,
Mhm.
and it's made it a challenge in some of those spots that we expect to be able to see deer coming for a ways. Especially right now, I'm self filming, which is like a whole rodeo going on up in the tree when you see them at 15 yards and it just
yeah,
nothing good happens. But typically I can depend on that spot to be pretty productive, and it is productive. But I've educated my fair share of deer in the last 4 days, so it's probably good that I'm going away for a while.
yeah. What about you, Owen?
Oh, spot on, Jared. Yeah, I mean, everything's holding leaves really. Like, normally elms they'd have their leaves down. I mean, oaks tend to hold them a little bit later, but we're having to pick stand sites based on just where we can see a lot of times. We can't video from
Yeah.
some of these. So
Yeah.
I'm seeing the same thing.
Yeah, I noticed today in the woods. I hunted today. I worked the last 2 days. I went back in the ridge where I kind of overlooking the bowl where I think Chubbs is bedding. And I got up in the dark and hung a set, and sun comes up, and I'm like, "What in the world?" You just can't see anything. And I'm
Mhm.
looking around. There's a maple tree behind me that's full foliage. Like what? That I mean, those normally drop so early, and the cherries, and like you said, the elms, and I mean, of course, there's a lot of oaks up there, but yeah, it's brutal. It's brutal in the timber. I had a pretty slow hunt. I had a young buck come in and didn't see very much. But Chubbs has been active the last 3 evenings on my cameras. So I'm at work, working till dark and getting pictures after dark of him on his feet and 3 different locations. And so tonight I went back in over the creek bottom with this north wind. I'd picked out a tree the other day, and I had one of the most unbelievable hunts I've ever had. This 6x5 buck that I've mentioned, maybe it was the last podcast. He showed back up about 10 days ago. He's a 6.5-year-old. He's kind of in that area, and he's one I was wanting to lay eyes on. I haven't had any good up close photos of him. He was a good solid buck last year, not super long tines, but just real heavy and a good number of points. And anyway, Ryan and I get the set hung, and we're sitting there, and we have a little 2-year-old come down the hill, and then a little 3-year-old 10, and they're kind of pushing each other around. The 10 point starts scraping and raking a tree, and he pops up on the trail, and he looks down towards that scrape that I got the camera on, and he pins his ears back, and he bristles up. So I'm glassing. I got to kind of get low and lean over, and I can see the 6x5 down there. And he starts marching up the hill towards the 3-year-old, towards us. And the 3-year-old, of course, backs down and walks off. And I tell Rye, I'm going to shoot him. And he's just marching up the hill, huge body deer. He threw some extra points this year, but pretty similar frame. And when that 3-year-old 10 came out of the timber, he had looked up on the ridge where I thought Chubbs was bedding. And he kind of looked like he was looking at a deer. And I said, I think there's a deer probably up there, and then he came down, and the 6x5 walks up, works the same scrape the 3-year-old's working. And I'm like, I got my bow. I'm ready for the 6x5 to walk at 25 yards. And then he turns. And so I'm like, I'm going to snort wheeze at him. I throw a snort. Yeah, you know where this is going. I throw a snort wheeze out. I'm just kind of looking in the brush. I'm like, I can see him in there. And all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose. Antlers crashing. They're fighting down there. And I'm like, it's got to be Chubbs. Who else is he fighting? Maybe Big Mac. And all of a sudden, the fight probably goes on for 30, 40 seconds, something like that. It was pretty intense, and it's in the timber, it's in the brush down the ravine, so we can't see it really well, but you can hear it, and you just see the bodies kind of flying around. And then all of a sudden, I see Chubbs just running up the hill, and the 6x5 just
no.
stomping behind him, just walking him off. Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah, wolf.
my two target bucks on the.
Whoa.
So, and I'm just at a loss for words. I'm just like, what just happened? Like the two deer I want to see, they're right here at 80 yards duking it out. And then I spot, nothing's moving after that. They're all standing still. And I spot a doe down in there. So I don't know if Chubbs is bedded with that doe or if they were all just, I mean, we're 80, 100 yards off the bean field, and there's a lot of does that bed in there. So, I'm not sure exactly what was going on there, but then the 6x5 I snort wheezed another time, and he started walking back towards us, and I thought maybe I'll get a shot after all, but then he just worked up to the alfalfa, and I got pictures of him in the alfalfa at the cherry tree, like he was just tearing everything up there. So it was an unbelievable hunt, and pretty cool to lay eyes on both of them for the first time.
Man,
That's crazy.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Rye was just texting me. He said at first he's like, I don't think I got footage of Chubbs, but he told me that he does have a few clips where you can tell it's him.
wow.
And he said the audio is pretty cool on the obviously it sounds. He had his earphones in, and so we're running two channels on the microphones, and so the shotgun comes in his left ear. And those bucks hit antlers, and he turned to the left to look behind him. I'm like, dude, they're fighting over here.
Those headphones, yeah, and those mics, those shotgun mics are crazy.
Yeah, it was spinning him around. I'm like, no. Like, it's the big deer over here.
Yeah.
So what a night in the woods.
Wild, man.
Pretty cool.
That's awesome. I can't wait to see that.
No doubt.
Anybody have anything else?
Oh, and did you go out tonight? Or you look like you've been having some pretty good hunts.
Yeah, I did go out tonight. I kind of got a reminder of what time of year it is. I feel like every buck was probably up on their feet tonight, but we had the little bucks were nudging the does around, and they were looking real ruddy, And a 5 or 6 year old come out, and there was does in the field, and he didn't even look at him. He just went right to feeding. So, he kind of told us what time of year it is still. He's like, yeah, not ready yet, boys.
Not ready yet.
Yeah.
What do you get?
Play.
What based on what you saw, Owen? What do you think? Another 2-3 days?
Well, I think a night like tonight, I think probably every buck was up on their feet before dark. I mean, I've looked at the trail cam photos already for tonight, and I mean, there was a lot of stuff up on their feet. So I think it's just a matter of picking the right spot. That's always the dilemma when you're hunting 1 or 2 deer, like most of us do. Pick that right spot on that night.
Yeah, there were a ton of deer on their feet. I'm just going based off the hunt, not trail cam stuff, but they from probably 4:30 on. Yeah. We didn't have a ton of close, but we could see a long ways, and they're just moving nonstop. Even driving home, I almost hit 3 or 4 different deer on the road. They're just everywhere tonight. It's just one of those nights.
Yeah.
Jason kind of answered that question. I think, each day that passes, there might be a doe that pops. So I think we're going to see more and more of these mature bucks, doing the thing. But it's November, just 2 days away, or 3 days away, whatever it is.
Yeah, and the weather forecast looks pretty good.
Yeah.
For next week.
Yeah.
It looks pretty well bulletproof. I would think that if we could have a recipe, this would be it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what you think as far as changing latitude, driving that far south, if you see a reduction in activity as far as rutting activity.
I did last year. It was like going a week back in time, basically. Yeah. It's only Pike County, Missouri, so I'm not that far from southeastern Iowa. But it's definitely, even when I hunted Iowa, it just seemed like it was a week behind.
Yeah, and it sounds like it. I think you've been seeing way more like activity than I have anyway. I mean, I'm seeing some deer with the good movements. I'm seeing some bucks, but I mean, it's mostly bed to feed and feed to bed. It's not been like what you were saying last podcast where you were seeing just buck after buck after buck. So I think that's
Yeah.
pretty normal. You guys up there are a little bit ahead of us.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I've seen some not, all out chases, but some mature deer from a distance. The first time I saw Trump Tower before he got killed, that's what he was doing. He was just, bulldogging a doe around the cornfield, and eventually lost interest, went to the next one and went to the next one and went to the next one. But I am seeing
Yeah.
mature deer on their feet, pretty regularly. But I'm not seeing, and this is what I always, I guess, try to use as a gauge for when I believe that they're in lockdown, and that's when you start to see all these fawns just wandering around, like,
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a
You
good
Yeah.
point.
and I've seen none
Yeah.
of that yet.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Still a little early for that. Yeah, it's always weird when you see a doe. I felt like last year I saw a bunch of does in November with their fawns, and I was like, why is that fawn? How's that fawn managed to be with them? So some years are kind of weird, but yeah, that is always a good indicator when the fawns are isolated.
Yeah, right, exactly. Anybody
What do,
seeing?
what do,
Oh, go ahead.
I was say, what do we got for plans for tomorrow? Anybody got anything they're pretty excited about?
I'm pretty excited. I'm going to be road hunting for 7 hours.
Yeah, that's true.
Um,
Sharpen up
Yeah,
that truck.
I'm actually gonna go. We've been talking about this spot in the creek, over the creek, because I think Chubb's bed's there probably half the time, and we got in clean and out clean tonight, and the 6x5 was bedded not far from us. The Chubbs was bedded not far from us, so we got the same wind in the morning. I think we're just gonna go climb right back in that set and try a morning hunt there, because I mean it's overlooking the bedding area. It sets up well for morning. I wouldn't hunt it in the afternoon there if that scrape wouldn't have been so active on camera so many times. But it's obviously, I think they're just bedded so close to it. It's the first thing they hit when they get out of their bed.
Yeah.
I've got a quick question, and I know we're going to get into questions here in just a second, but I've got a quick question for you guys. Just a simple yes or no. As a general rule, do you make it a rule to not sit the same place twice, or 3 times, or 4 times, whatever the case may be?
As
For
a
me,
general rule, I would say yes, but it depends on how clean I got in and out to hunt before. So if I had a really good hunt and I got out clean or whatever, I'll go back to the same spot if I'm, there's a buck using it or whatever. But as a general rule, I would agree. I try to bounce around and keep every spot fresh. But that access and, if you really have a bad hunt and everything busted you on a particular hunt, then I don't like to go back there for several days.
yeah,
Yeah. Go ahead, Jared.
I was gonna say I would echo that. And for me to hunt a stand more than hunting a stand 3 or 4 times in a season is a lot for me. I bounce around a lot, I do a lot of hanging hunts. But when Owen's alluding to, depending on how clean I got in or out, like it has to be bulletproof almost for me to go back and hunt that quite a bit, at least in succession. Maybe you give it a few day break or a week break or something, get back in there when there's good conditions. But to hunt a stand back to back to back or something, it'd have to be an absolute bulletproof spot. And I have one of these that I'm kind of excited. And I was telling Mike, I hung the stand. I went in by boat the other day in the rain and hung it just off the riverbank. So go in by boat, hop up the bank, climb in, climb out back on the boat and get out. It's one of those spots where it pretty much is bulletproof that I think you could potentially hunt it over and over again. But that's really the only scenario that I could say where I would hunt a spot quite a bit like that, is if it was almost bulletproof.
Yeah, and I'm probably a little different. I mean, I think it depends on the time of year in the farm, and obviously, like early in the year, late in the year, and deer bed to feed. I feel like you can stir things up a little more. In the rut, it almost doesn't matter. You just they're crazy and they're just moving so much. But like my home farm, it's a couple hundred acres, And then the periphery of it's a lot of open field. So I've got kind of this one core central area. There's a lot of agricultural activity. The owners, like the previous owners, constantly riding his four-wheeler through there. Some of the guys I own the ground with are running their Polarises around in there. So there's a lot of human activity, which I think does, make a difference if you're talking about conditioning. And so you guys have seen me like hunt the cherry tree. I'm not going dive into the timber or something, but I'm just hunting a fence line in the field. And, I hunted it probably 4 nights in a row and saw a different mature buck every night and saw bunches of deer every night. At some point, it gets to me like I'm tired of sitting there and I don't want to sit there. And I start to think like I need to go move somewhere. So I still have those feelings like I don't want to overhunt an area, but there's a lot that goes into it, as far as if it works or not. And, I'm not too hard opposed to it. I mean, I'll do it on some of these farms if I think, but I think it'll work. If I go sit there and have a slow sit, I'm like, well, I guess I burned it up.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a good point, Mike. Hunting in the middle of the rut when everything's so chaotic could be, completely different than early and late. Like you said, get away with a lot more.
I agree.
Yeah, I've got a stand that the stand that I killed out of last year. There's not a permanent set there, but my afternoon plan for tomorrow involves going and hunting that tree. And it's just a spot in this farm that is a giant bottleneck funnel between 2 giant tracts of timber, probably 1,000 acres north and 400, 500, 600 south. And it's a stand that once I hang tomorrow, I'm going to leave it. I may hunt it 15 times in the next 3 weeks. I'll hunt it. It doesn't really bother me if I get busted by, I wouldn't want to get busted by like a mature deer, but I'm also a little different where I don't have a deer right now that I'm targeting. I just want to kill a mature buck and I'll sit that tree. I fully plan on hunting tomorrow afternoon. I may sit it morning and afternoon, Sunday, Monday, as long as it takes. That's kind of my thing is like you guys mentioned time of year. I wouldn't want to hunt the same tree early October where I'm hunting feed and get picked off or anything. But once it gets on, I mean, I'm talking, at least the camera showed last year, I had a different buck every single day. And as far as I know, that deer has no idea that I'm going to be in that tree. So I'd sit it every single time I got the right wind.
Yeah, that spot sounds awesome. Sounds like rut hunting 101 travel corridor.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We're finally going to get some, I don't know about you guys, but we've had lots of screwy winds here lately, like east, southeast, north, northeast. Nothing what I would call ordinary. But it sounds like it's going to, of course, I'm going to be gone, but it sounds like it's going to come back out of the west, northwest, and things like that we all set up stands for that we haven't been able to get to probably the last few days. So I think that's going to be, I think it's going to be a good weekend for deer hunting overall, and it's going to be a good 7 days stretch here, and maybe longer, especially. It looks like, I guess I didn't look at the long range forecast today, and maybe you guys can shed some light on it, but it looked to me like it was going to be highs in the 40s, even down in Missouri later in this week, this coming week.
Yeah, I haven't looked that far out, but the next 4 or 5 days for sure looks good.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, it'll be interesting to get there and report what looks different. I distinctly remember last year it being different. They're just, if they were going 60 miles an hour here, they're going 40 there or 30.
Yeah.
All right. Don't everybody talk
Max,
at once.
you got some questions?
We got a pile of them. So we're just going to do a rapid fire, but appreciate every single person who responded. All I asked was through Instagram and Facebook, and we got a huge reply. So firstly, appreciate everybody, all the support. The podcast is doing well. So we definitely wouldn't be in this position and fired up to this every night without everybody. So we'll get into them. Some of these are directed at individuals and then some of them for the group. And we got a bunch. So we'll just try to start rifling through as I see good ones. First good one I see from Zachary says how much the temperature drops and cold fronts matter during the rut. That's a good question. Where does it really matter? Is it a time period where you just hunt? You got to be there.
Hunt.
Owen likes that one.
Yeah, sure. I like them all. Yeah, I think when you get to the right time of year, I mean, just got to be there, good temperatures or not. I remember years ago when I'd go out, the prime days, say 9th, 10th of November, and it was just super windy. I mean, 30, 40 mile an hour winds. And I'm like, nothing's going to move in this. And I would have the best sits of the whole year. I'd see bucks cruising everywhere. It didn't matter. I mean, it was the rut and they're on their feet.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it might subdue movement a little bit if it's really hot, but breeding's going to take place is the bottom line.
Yeah,
There you
that's
go.
what I would say. Warm, windy, rain or shine. I think we're approaching the next 20 days. You just got to be in a tree. I was telling somebody today that asked me that like I said earlier, the 2 deer I really wanted to target this year have kind of ghosted me, but we're in the next 20 days. You just have no idea when you're hunting those kind of funnels, or even you're just hunting your farms. You have no idea what came in the night before. Even if you pulled cards that morning, these deer are shifting and it seems like crazy. I'm still picking up new bucks. So I think
Right.
you guys are right. You got to be in there. Another good one too from Nick Tatum. So when do you guys start hunting all day? I know if I'm looking at this group, I don't know. I've hunted with Jared and Mike. I think we do a ton of all day sits. So I don't know if Jason or Owen, if you guys do them, but when is the time to do that? Or do you guys even do them?
Not very often for me. I mean, mornings and evenings. I mean, I usually set out that middle part of the day just because I'm getting too old to sit all day.
Yeah. Is that,
Yeah.
I know Jared and Mike, I know I can speak for us. We got a lot of stuff we try to accomplish around the lunch hour, whether, emails or office work. For me, it's a lot of editing, but I'd be curious, Jason, I know my cameras always show every year when it gets rock and roll, and midday is always a good time. Do you hunt all day, Jason?
No, I don't. I don't have that kind of patience. My phone rings way too often.
We might need better cushions on our stands. What are we doing?
No,
Yeah.
I guess my life doesn't allow me to. I mean, there's just,
Yeah.
especially the last couple of years with the real estate being what it is. But I will say this: I've learned the last couple of years to just not put your pressure on yourself. I try to get up at 4 every day, but maybe I don't leave the house at 5:30. Maybe I leave the house at 7, and just forego that first hour.
Yeah.
Or whatever, and get that extra work done so that I can, or maybe even get out there at 8 and stay until 3. Because how many times have we all sat in a tree and had just bonkers lights out? We got in at noon or whatever, and it's just lights out till 3 o'clock, and then the lights are out
Mhm.
after 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I think
would
the
say
general
that-
consensus is the
You
general
can't.
consensus among our group is that it's good. It's worth sitting in if your schedule allows it. If you as a hunter can do it, I think it's worth doing.
If you had to pick a period, when would you say like November 1st you start, or would you say, like, if you had to pick a 5-day stretch, when's the go time to sit all day?
I know the answer to this for me just because I've kept such strict trail camera data.
Yeah, when is it for you?
I would say it's absolutely the 31st through the 4th.
That was my vote too.
I'd go a
Yeah,
little
that'd
bit later than that for me. If you go back and look at all the bucks that I've killed and the dates, I would say this about the 6th to the 13th would be my dates.
Yeah. Basically somewhere in there. I mean, I always try to, I'm a morning guy in the ruts, so I'll try to hunt till noon and then get down maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, and get back up and finish off the day. And then if there's always lulls in those all day sits, but I can tell you one thing: if I got a lot of activity or I got a hot doe and the things are going crazy, I'm not getting down. That's usually where my all day sits come from. Is that
Sure.
it's
You aren't
hot and then
planning
it's yeah. So
Yeah.
that's where mine come from.
You've
But
been
I'm
in
usually not
sen-
prepared for all day.
Yeah.
I was going to say too, keep in mind too, as you go farther north, like we were talking earlier, I say 6th to the 13th. I mean, because in southern Iowa, I think
Yeah.
peak breeding is probably 15th, 17th, somewhere in there. So as you go farther north, maybe you back those dates up a little bit,
Yeah.
Yeah, the reason that I say what I say is because I think I mentioned it on the last podcast. I really start to see a steep decline. Like, whew. in mature deer on camera just over the last 4 years after the seventh. Typically, it's the fifth or sixth that it starts to slow down, but I see just a tremendous decline, at least in Wisconsin, during those dates. So I feel like
Yeah.
by the 15th, we're coming out of lockdown already.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
that's complex because they're
well,
not
now,
really working scrapes, all like we noticed that same trend, but I always think, well, they're not really working scrapes at this point. They're going from doe to doe and they are locking down and you never know when they're going to get on their feet and move. I mean, that period still might be good to be sitting all day, but I agree the cameras totally slow down.
But yeah, to your point, if there's time to be in the woods and your schedule allows to be in the timber, then that's if you want to kill a big
Good.
deer, that's probably where you ought to be.
That's right. Yeah.
yeah. All right, let's try to get on to some of these. We got about 100 and we've got one so far. We knocked that one out of the park. Some of these other ones we've definitely answered as we've gone. A couple of guys have asked, how do we think the pre-rut is this year so far as compared to the last? I think the general consensus is pretty much the same as far as calendar wise, but the weather has helped us out a lot. We've had some really nice weather. Let's see. Here's one for Jared that I'm actually kind of curious too. Somebody asked, have you seen any of your target bucks or are you hunting one specific buck right now?
I haven't seen any target bucks. I had one target buck get killed, and since then, I've gotten a few pictures of a couple other options, but we obviously Merino is one that we talk about a lot, and he's been on camera, but
He has.
Yeah, I mean, I think at last card pull, I think he was on camera at like 1 a.m. on the 22nd, maybe was the last time.
A couple people asked about Dak as well. Is Dak still around?
Dak is around. We're getting pictures of him, but I don't think we have but maybe one daylight picture of him too, this entire year. So I mean, we have no pattern on either one of those deer, but they're around. They haven't been killed yet, but I think the chances are higher of catching up with Dak than they are Merino. I think Dak spends a little more time on our property than Merino does. Merino, I tell people all the time, I wish I could say I have some grand strategy in place, but it's just going to be a lot of luck if we're in the right place at the right time for that deer.
Yeah. Here's a really good one that Mike, well, we all have talked about it a little bit, but we can go a little more in depth. This one gentleman asked, how are we deciding what's a good win for a stand, and how specifically are you deciding what wins to hunt for a stand in the midst of a timber block? I know that's a tough one too. And I know I've learned since I moved here, I used to hunt, growing up hunting in the South, we got a lot of edges. And so I always would hunt an edge and blow it back down that edge. But I've noticed a lot when it's go time, at least the properties that I've hunted with some of you guys or hunted on my own in Iowa, just seems like you always have to give something up. Now I know for a fact when I hunt with Jared, we're hunting some of these other little thicker farms that maybe you hunt. It's just a few sacrifice. I know, Owen, you've talked about it too. Sometimes you hang these sets and maybe you're giving up 25% of your 60 degree.
There is no bulletproof win for specific stand. Exactly. That's what I said the other day in one of the blogs. Yep.
I don't think that's a bad thing either. A lot of times, when it's a lot of times it's funny. You get in this stand that you pictured of your whole, as you're hanging it, you're like, all right, they're going to come from right here. And then, kick of the rut, doe comes from behind you where you never thought.
All you can do is try to know where, say, the primary bedding is and the primary feeding is, and you still are using that to your advantage. Like, try to catch them coming back into the bedroom and going out in the evening, and then the rut downwind side of the bedding, so if I've got some open timber against some thick brushy stuff, you're trying to use these concepts, but you get out in the timber, of course they can come on any side of you. So it always makes it hard.
Yeah, I would say if we had any advice or anything, I don't know if this is general consensus, but between trail cameras or just looking at trails on the ground, it may be one of those things where you you may have to hunt it too. I know, Jared, you've talked about it too. Sometimes you hang these sets and you got to hunt it. to
Yeah,
know what are you
100%.
sometimes you think that the wind, like you're going to have a great wind for this. And then you realize the deer didn't come from where you think they're going to come from, or maybe they take this weird trail. So sometimes I would say personally, my experience is sometimes you just got to hunt it, which stinks. You don't want to get busted, but sometimes you got to hunt it and figure it out. What's that wind that you need? Like the cherry tree, Mike, right? Did you ever
Right.
think, I know from sitting in that cherry tree, you blow it down a fence line, but also it's a really nice creek bottom down at the bottom of that fence line.
Yep. And it's just from sitting it and figuring out where the deer come from and where I can sneak in and not get picked off on the walk in. And then it's even changed this year compared to last year when I had standing corn. Now I got beans, and how the deer use it. So I've modified that. And like Ryan and I have been talking about this all year because I haven't really hunted the home farm a ton during the rut. Last year I killed early and then I switched my attention to DAC. And 2 years ago, I just haven't. I killed Todd Gurley early, and I didn't have a real big target there. So like this year, I've got a target deer, and I didn't kill him early, and so I'm spending all this time in the woods in these different areas, and we're just learning how the deer use that area in the morning and the evening, and that's going to help narrow it down. So yeah, I would agree with that.
I
Yeah.
will say too, if you're into timber, typically you have trails that you're setting up on, or maybe a creek crossing or something like that. So you're picking a tree based on a wind direction. So that's why I'm going to that stand on that wind.
Yep. Yeah.
Versus if you're out like on a field or something where it's more sporadic.
Yeah, I think even if you just start with with understanding, there's very rarely a bulletproof setup. If you just get that through your head, then you can start thinking about, okay, what's the best for this setup? I
Yeah.
think that's a good starting point.
Yeah. Not everybody can use that boat.
Here's a
I'm
good
on that
one.
every day.
Here's a good one. It's a little bit different question, but Owen, you seem to be more of a deer biologist expert than me. Is there a particular weather condition that a whitetail's nose is easier or harder to pick up scent? I believe it's like more of a damp thing, but I'd be curious to know. Like a dry day, is it harder for them to smell?
That's right. Yeah. Any kind of humidity or there's, moisture in the air, they can smell a lot better. Same reason they lick their nose when they're trying to smell. They
Mhm.
dampen up their nose, So it's same thing. If it's dry, it's harder for them to smell.
This
No doubt.
goes along with wind too. This one guy, it's just a heck of a question too. Texas Woodman, here's his profile. He wants to know what resource we all use for weather forecasts and wind direction. That's a
There's like 10 of them.
Which five?
They're all wrong.
I'd be curious. I use just a weather channel app, but actually that's a kind of a good question. Does anybody
Yeah, I
I know
like
does Onyx have
windy.
now?
Yeah,
Oh,
so
I'm using
Onyx
my phone.
now Onyx just came out with a new feature that lets you put in optimal wind directions
Yeah.
for different
Yeah.
stands, which is kind of cool.
That is
Yeah.
I use a combination like you guys mentioned too. I like the Windy app for wind direction just because it shows all the arrows going and you can look at the aerial map of where you're sitting and see where the wind's forecasted to blow anyways.
What's it called? The
yeah.
Windy app?
Just
Yeah,
windy.
It's just called Windy.
Yeah.
I use
if-
Wonderground quite a bit for a lot of the other data like barometric pressure and basically everything else I get it from the Wonderground app. The one thing that drives me crazy about Wonderground, I want to like contact them about it, but their hourly wind direction, the arrow points the opposite direction.
Yeah.
So if
yeah,
it's a northwest
yeah.
wind, it points like it's from the southeast. It drives me crazy.
They point
Right.
to the northwest instead of from the northwest. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
So the answer
Yeah.
to that question is they're all lying.
Use Wonderground for everything except wind hourly wind
Download-
direction.
as much
Yeah,
storage. as you
Wonderground
want,
has a great one
download
for the
them.
barometric pressure, but I actually
Yeah.
paid for the premium subscription on Weather Channel this year. It's the first time I ever do that, and it has the arrows on the map now. So I like that for the hourly and all that. I mean, I have like 10 of them on my phone, so I've always liked. Yeah, underground and windy historically, and then this year I'm using a lot of that Weather Channel premium. Yeah, it's nice when the three of them line up. That's when you know it's going to be the opposite. But anyway.
Yeah. All right. I'll try to pick like one or two more. I see a really good one that I want to get all of you guys' opinion. I'm not even going to try to say this name here, but this one person asked, how do we exit our stands at night in the evening knowing that there's deer around you? I just got put in this predicament just 2 nights ago, and it was a disaster. I've hunted with Jared before, and so I know that I don't know if you did it with your mouth. It's been 2 years ago now where you just tried to coyote howl, but Grant and I got stuck in the tree with like 20 deer inside of like almost in bow range, and I tried to coyote howl, my voice cracked, and they all just looked right at me. It was terrible, but that's actually a dang good question. Especially I feel like this time of year, late October, you're really wanting to hunt where these does are. And unfortunately that puts you in the scenario a lot like I was, and I'm sure a lot of us have been. Like I remember, I think it was Jared, you got stuck in the tree, our last podcast, like way after dark. So what's everybody's, why don't we just go down between each of you? Like, what's your tip? Do you wait or do you do something or what? I used to throw my cushion growing up in the South. You hunt over a corn feeder. I'd take the cushion off my tree stand and throw it at them. Never worked.
I will, if I'm in a situation like that, more often than not, I'm not hunting right where the deer want to end up and stay. I like being somewhere where they're working past, or if I'm hunting over food, more transition food, so I can sneak out the back. If I do end up in a situation where they happen to be feeding, like the other one of the past podcasts or recent podcasts, that was just a transition area in the timber, but they just stopped and started browsing on acorns forever, and I just wait them out in that case. Other times, if I'm in a spot where I could shoot a doe to clear the field, I'll do that. Right before legal shooting ends, just fire an arrow
Someone's
and get
gonna
them out
have
of
to
there.
die
I would.
Just volunteer
Sacrifice.
yourself.
My biggest thing is I don't want to get picked off in the tree. If I spook
Right.
them, halfway back to my truck or something like that, I'm good with that. I don't want them looking up at the tree, us get, and especially us, it takes forever to pack up all the camera gear and stuff like that.
Right.
So I don't know. There's certain times where you're just in a predicament and there's no real great answer, but those are a few of the things I guess that I think about.
Yeah. Jason, what do you got? What's your go-to?
I have so a couple different things. If I have to, I always have a coyote howler with me. That works great. And then the guy that we lease from on the one of the pieces just love we call it our deer hunting Uber service. We have him drop us in, and again, he loves to hunt. He just health his health just prevents him from doing so. So he'll just he'll come out and blow out the field, and we've got a couple different rigs that we'll use, and he'll just come out and blow out the field.
Bill was
That's
famous.
perfect.
For that. I remember that all the time.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Have some, and I don't know if it was his wife or whoever, but would come clear that field, and it just seems like sometimes you almost got to run them over. Feels like with a truck or to get them out of there.
Yep.
Yeah, and they'll just go to the edge and wait for you to leave and come back out. Doesn't really spook them that hard.
Oh, and what do you do?
I really like these drainages, not necessarily creeks, but it's basically a creek. It's a drainage, and I try and set them up so you can drop right down out of the tree into that drainage and you can walk that creek out. That works out really nice sometimes, and I've got some that even you can access it. You go into the field, and then when you get down, you drop into that ravine and you go out a different way, and you have a vehicle waiting for you, however far away, and you walk that ravine out. So
That
that's my go-to.
like trimming all that out in the summer. Like I know that's another thing Bill used to do a ton. Did you get in there and cut them all out?
Yeah, that's where Joe comes in really handy. I love it.
Oh, funny. Yeah.
Jared, what about you, Jared? I know I learned the coyote howl, at least thought I learned it from you, but I know some of the spots you hunt, like don't even, I know the river farm, some of the spots you hunt specifically are pretty dang tough.
Yeah. And one thing on the coyote howler too, just make sure you check with your local game warden or whatever on the regulations. I think it varies a decent amount. I know the one that I had talked to said that using electronic coyote call is illegal, even because you just can't use electronic calls while deer hunting, basically, as what is the way it's read. And because you're technically deer hunting, even if it's after legal shooting light or whatever, it was still a no for the game wardens that I had talked to. So just keep that in mind. That's why Max was bringing up the whole voice thing. But yeah, I mean, that can
Practice that at home before you try it.
it can it can be effective, but it can also be like they just look up in your tree and like that there's not supposed to be a coyote up there.
Yeah.
So you don't
Yeah.
think you can still use when I say a howler, I've got just a little mouth call that I use.
Yeah.
That is, I'm pretty sure that's legal.
Yeah.
If it's not, I've never done it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I just looked into it this past week, and Iowa, at least as far as Jared hit the nail on the head, as far as Iowa is concerned, and it has to do with the fact that it's an electronic call. You can do anything.
Electronic ones. Yep. Yeah, I talked to the game wardens down in Van Buren a long time ago when I was had my farm down there, and that game warden was like, well, it's not an electronic deer call, but he said the law basically states that it's just any electronic call. And so, that's a gray area. And it's something that, he particularly was like, at our yearly meeting this year, we need to bring it up and ask, I guess, like, would coyote calls like count as a violation? But I think if you were reading it by the book, it is a violation if it's electronic.
Yeah,
And,
the reason it'd be so nice to have to be able to use an electronic one is because if you're using a hand caller, you're doing it from the tree, but electronic, on your way in, you could put it 75,
40
80
yards
yards
down
in
the
the
fence
grass.
line. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, huge advantage there. Yeah, that sound works great. Cause I'll take a spin, but I basically echo a lot of what Jared was saying. I mean, most of my places I hunt, I try to hunt where I'm not hunting necessarily destination feed, except for late season. So a lot of the deer just pass them through, and if you give them a second, they're out of there. And once I'm out of the tree, I don't necessarily care if I bump deer. So I just try to obviously have good access and exit routes like Owen was talking about. That's not always possible on all my spots, but I'll sit there and just wait a second for the deer to move through the food plot because they generally don't sit around for too long and then get out of there.
Cool. I think we've answered a bunch of them. A lot of these are repeat questions, and then we'll maybe save this. I'll save some of these for the next one.
Awesome.
Great work, Max.
Nice job. Anybody have
people?
Anybody have anything they want to talk about before we end the show for the night? Like any final thoughts, marching orders, whatever?
Good luck on your trip.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Somebody kill something. Come on.
I hope I get some sleep. Two of those guys just snore just horrible. You can hear them all.
This trip is just sounding better and better, man.
It was a great idea when it was in December. No, it'll be fun. It's a great place. It's a beautiful place. A little bit like Southwest Wisconsin. A lot of hills, a lot of topography, and there's big deer. So it'll be fun.
Awesome. I haven't made any predictions yet, but I'm gonna say someone in our group is gonna kill between now and November 1st. So the next 3 days.
I sure hope so.
Don't let
Seems
me
like
down.
things are getting right.
Yeah.
I know exactly. Come on, Owen.
I'll give it a shot, man.
Yeah. I just like filming the deer. I don't like shooting them. So
I kind of feel like that too. Turn it into a deer watcher.
yeah, exactly.
You guys are just too picky. You guys got to step down to my standard. You guys will be tagged out way.
It was nice to see Chubbs, and his activity is definitely picking up. So I'm I got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday off next week, and so I'm about
Awesome.
to hit a 5-day stretch here, and I'm hoping that I can get something down. This is certainly about the best time in my opinion, and the weather looks good. So
Yep.
Why don't you shoot both of them tomorrow morning?
yeah, no, I joked with Rye. I said, man, we came pretty close to like, it could have worked out where you could
That would've
stick
been-
2 deer in one hunt. Holy moly, that'd be crazy.
That would be epic.
Epic, yeah. Of course, we come away with 0, which is the more likely thing. But yeah. Hopefully, we can get one of them in there. That 6x5 seems very aggressive, very territorial. So I'm excited. Making my decision tonight after seeing him in person that I'm gonna shoot him. It's exciting to go back in there, and it's like my mind has started to drift into another zone. I'm not necessarily going hard after Chubbs. I want to go shoot him. And I think this time of year with him in that creek bottom, a little snortweeds or something, it might be over. So it's exciting to think about. I won't sleep tonight.
Go get them.
Awesome. Anybody else? No?
Good one to end on.
All right. Well, thanks again
Take it easy, guys.
to everybody for all the feedback that we've been getting. It's certainly appreciated. Keep those questions coming, and Max will post some stuff on social media when we have a limited amount of time here, so we'll do the best we can with respect to getting those questions answered. I think probably through our conversation, we're probably answering a lot of them. If anybody wants to get a hold of anyone specifically, you guys have your emails on the Midwest Whitetail website?
Yeah, there's an
Yeah.
Okay.
ask section.
Yeah, there's submit questions on there, or you can send emails to info@midwestwhitetail.com, and we get those and we'll direct it to whoever.
All right. More than anything, thanks to everybody for the support. Our numbers just keep climbing in terms of listenership, and that's exciting to see. It always feels good to know you're bringing something of value. So keep the positive comments coming, and I guess if you've got a negative one, you can share that as well. We're not above that, but
yeah, we're lovers.
right on. All right, so we'll do this again shortly. I'm bringing
Yes,
all
sir.
my
Yeah.
gear I'm bringing all my gear to Missouri, and I've got a good internet connection. So,
Awesome.
Awesome. Let's do it.
all right,
Sounds
you guys
good,
have a good
guys.
night.
Yeah,
Thanks,
luck.
guys.
Take it easy.